Parts are on the way, but there are things that are even more important to watch for those of you that actually own this car in this video. These pieces are finally finished and they've been sanded and prepped for primer and paint. So I'm going to get that done before it gets too cold. Now that piece with the body filler and the fiberglass sheet, that took a lot of time and patience to get it to shape. So just be ready for that if you have a similar situation. But if you're in the States, just buy new ones, repair these slowly on your own time. Final real task before parts is going to be doing the wet sanding on this light. Although it looks pretty good to start, when you're here in person, you see more on it. So I'll do that off camera. So some of you have followed the series. I mean, the JB weld I could have done all on the bottom and then just filled the cracks with body filler a bit. Or plastic bond, whatever you want to use. It all works on the material, okay? So maybe it's not perfectly smooth just because I wanted to keep glue holding the cracks together from the top and bottom. But it is good enough, flat enough, and tucked away enough that just a little bit of bump from the JB weld, which I've sanded too, is not going to show itself. The body fillered area is completely smooth. Being that this is a car that's been worked on by hacks before, you see all the adjustment screws? These are for positioning body panels, bumpers, hoods, all kind of stuff, okay? I don't know which one is specific to which, but we're going to have to figure out these later if things are even allowable to be alignable properly with the current panels and whatever structure we have. So see here, this side. We'll walk over to the other side and you will see that the gaps in the screws don't match. These could help give us some better hood and bumper alignment, and they also might not make a difference. There's more stuff that goes along with this stuff, but I mean this subject for another video. Now, moving down here, throughout all this time, I've been very annoyed with this. Before I put the bucket here, okay, by chance, you see the purple around the lip of the bucket? On the ground, I would touch it and it looked like pink Audi coolant. I was like, how on earth is this thing still leaking? Oh, okay, fortunately, so this is weeks later, but by chance it's doing it right now. This screw, whatever it is with the washer, that's washer fluid, okay, that slowly leaks from some kind of washer or gasket there. And by chance it got around the bucket there, and I saw Petro-Canada has purple washer fluid and I have all different colors, so that's what it is. It's just a little bit of a washer fluid leak. It was not coolant. So do look at that screen at the bottom right hand corner of your screen because you can see the leak there. We're going to deal with this later. Maybe when I get to parts I'll look into it more. But the other thing I want to show you, which kind of threw me off a bit. Okay, so there's the bucket for reference. You see the black container? Alright, follow it up. You see it remains a black container. But, you see where I zoomed in? Then it turns into the transparent container that's up on top. So don't mistake this giant reservoir down here, the black one, for being some kind of other fluid or coolant. It's not. It's just a switch over of color material for the washer fluid container. So that's what happened in this case. In terms of power steering, we'll look into that more, but do check this, okay? People have recently on the forum said they've had leaky lines, depending on repairs, whatnot, but this is not a transparent container, nor does it have a level sensor as far as I've seen. So do check this and make sure you're topped off with the correct type of power steering fluid. Now we're going to move on to some more recent yet old discoveries that I have made on the car, which is important for a lot of you that follow the series. So you can remember in one of the parts I said take the headlights out for coolant leaks. On the driver's side in this section, there are a lot of coolant hoses directly underneath the headlight, so I'm not taking that back, but your coolant leak needs to be from further up for you to need to take out the headlights. You see where the frame rail, the unibody frame rail, the silver thing at the mid-center bottom of your screen is? The water pump and a lot of hoses and stuff are hiding under there, so the headlight wouldn't help. You'd have to look from under. The water pump is a complex shape There are going to be openings that if it's leaking from, you're going to have a hard time finding out. But in my case, what I want you to do is to go back to coolant leak part 2. I had technically solved this at that point, but the one streak in the picture at the end is what created this entire mayhem of taking apart everything on the driver's side because I wasn't sure. There's a point in that video where I start revving up the car. At that point, distinctly a trail of coolant comes down from that short hose, which is cut in this piece here. You guys remember what I dealt with this hose. Could have been taken out easier had I had the needle nose plier trick, but you guys have seen that. So here's the thing. You can definitely trace the trajectory of the coolant in that video. It was solved there. That one streak at the top, okay, I think it was a video called More Findings that I did a week or two ago. In that one, what we discovered underneath on the coolant aluminum hose was that crusty coolant buildup and that sealer that somebody had possibly put on there. So what has actually happened was this hose had failed at both ends, and it had just shown itself a lot more on the water pump end. So I'm 99% sure that just this small hose was the issue. We've taken off more stuff, so we're going to be solved, but we'll see. Okay, but the way okay, let's grab the water pump and I'll show you what I'm saying. Go definitely watch Coolant Leak Part 2 because all these things will be clear when you map it onto your water pump. But the leak was coming from here. So the trajectory of every bump is a leak coming from a different hose. I'm pointing at the front, but it was actually coming from the back. This is the way it sits in the car. Okay? Now, if I can do this, you see this one here? This is the toughest one because it's buried right up under the frame rail. If you're getting a leak from this section, you're really going to have to look hard, okay? This one is where you see in that video we have the leak from, and the other end is the one streak. Both sides had failed, most likely due to someone misaligning the C. I still haven't taken the clamp off. Now, here's one thing interesting I want to show you about Audi coolant hoses. This crease is not the failed coolant hose part. You're going to see lots of pictures on Google of failed coolant hoses. And you see this bubbling part might be part of it, but this crease is not. I'm going to show it to you on another healthy hose that I found on the car. If we put a new one of these in the right orientation, we should be fine. Now another test that I'm going to do, which is again a crazy move, these constant velocity or 2-ear clamps, whatever they're called, I kind of don't like the way they are. Okay, it's probably a decent design, but we're going to reuse the rusty one. Okay, because I want to test these clamps in the sense that if you were to reuse them or a shop reuse them, was it the clamp that weakened out and allowed this to shift? I highly doubt this, but we are going to test it. Okay, so I'm not going to put a new clamp. We're just going to put a new hose, line it up properly, and see if the clamp continues to do its job. And if the new hose also shifts, that means that you definitely should change these clamps because maybe the tech didn't do something wrong. But this is all speculation. I just want to test everything so we find out, was this a human error or was it something else, and is it going to happen again? Again, this is a test car now, okay? I don't really care too much about it, but I'm still obviously going to do things properly. So, to show you that crease, okay, so here's where we are, all right? I'm going to be zooming into the headlight onto this upper rad hose, the curvy one, okay? I don't have very good light, but look for what I was saying in terms of that stock Audi coolant hose crease, okay? So that you don't mistake this for a faulty coolant hose. You see it right there in the center of your screen, the little U shape? If you touch that, it's not completely straight. This is very odd. Other brand coolant hoses aren't really like this, but this is not a defect. It is a part of the hose. Is it possible that it is a defect on both of these? Very low chance, okay? I don't have enough experience to know for sure, but when we get the new parts in, at least the short hose, that is going to clarify. And I think I saw it on one of the websites that it does have that crease, but I just wanted to show you all these things on the old parts so that you can look out for every small thing so that you don't, because you're probably going to be replacing more stuff. Oh, and another thing, because I had these thoughts last week and now I'm just trying to put them all together. I also figured out, again, you can, I don't even have to tell you that I figured it out. You go in the video, coolant leak part 2, watch it twice, okay? You see the corrosion around those 2 bottom bolt holes? If you watch how the coolant travels from that leak, it actually goes up into the, it hugs the bottom of the water pump, goes into, can I do this one-handed? Here, okay? From the bottom, all right? It's not coming from inside of the thermostat housing or the coolant flow inside the car. From outside, it would get into this crack where it mates up to the rest of the water pump, and this crust has built up from outside due to this current coolant leak. Okay, so when we clean this up, that stuff's not going to come back. Water pump is going to get all new gaskets, and she should be fine. Now I got to make sure I haven't touched this. Okay, this got to go in the right orientation so it sits on the hex shaft. Those will be wonders of putting the car back together. We can get into that later. But yeah, that short coolant hose, I'm very sure, was the main thing in this whole series. So, very important part. Don't discount any of the other stuff. Your coolant hose leak could be a completely different hose, misinstalled or not misinstalled. I am happy that I'm going to reuse all the rusty clamps. Actually, I'm not happy about it, but this is a test car, and I believe that these things can do 350,000 kilometers with perfect maintenance, very quick oil changes, proper warm up every time the vehicle is driven, and it can be flogged when it's warmed up. But these are the stock coolant hose clamps, okay? So before blaming anything else, we'll get the diagnosis down, even though it took me 6,000 steps and I had it down in part 2, but this is how we all watch and learn. So coolant clamps are going to be reused. You're not going to see any new coolant clamps on this part of the series. So this car's probably going to be apart again, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Parts are coming. You guys have been good and patient. Just be a little more patient, and we'll have a first start video soon. This here is the other end of the short coolant hose that you see the streak come down from in coolant leak part 2. I looked into the inside of this a little more carefully. There is some cracking inside the material. There is some black residue stuff that comes off. Again, maybe somebody didn't put sealant in this hole, but the main thing in one of the previous recent videos was I screenshotted in one of my other videos the green gasket that had black residue, which is a sign of a foreign material possibly, because the ones that are black coolant hose with residue, hey, who knows for sure. But that green one was kind of the giveaway that some weird shoddy stuff had been done by a previous shop in here. So this end of here, these tears are from me picking it and knifing it. So unfortunately, we can't get a solid answer out of this. But once everything's back together, this stuff will be more clear as to what happened. So, and before I drop the hood on my head, you forget all this stuff, but you see the bump stops in the hood. One of them is completely missing on that side, which might have something to do with the weird alignment that this car's stuff had before. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do about that hood strut still. I gotta see on the forums if people are really using the S4 ones with success, but I'm pretty sure the steel hood on the S4 requires more spring tension, whatever. I can't think right now. Okay, gotta figure that out because I'm getting very annoyed. And that 2x4 thing, even with the cloths that I use, has damaged slightly one of the plastic things in there. And the weather stripping is still okay. It's just starting to be not a good look, and I've been doing it for too long. But who knows what the solution to that one's going to be.